Hey friends, so welcome back to another episode of I Know I'm Crazy with Naja Hall. Today's episode is going to be like I'm at coffee or cocktails with an old friend and you guys are just kind of getting to listen. Today I'm talking to Jen Peters. Jen Peters' work on inner child healing and relationship patterns opens up a lot of deep and meaningful conversations, and she and I are about to have one right after this dance break.
I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy. Naja Hall.
So Jen, off camera before we got started, you and I were legitimately trying to we were catching up like we were old girlfriends. And I was like, wait, first of all, you have an accent. And guys, Jen is in New Zealand. And that's one of the places I've always wanted to visit and have never gotten to go to. And she told me that most of her clients are in New York City. So she's actually going to be coming here at some point this year. So we'll get to have coffee and tea in real life. So Jen Peters, welcome to I Know I'm Crazy with Naja Hall. How the heck are you today?
Oh, what a beautiful welcome. Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. I love the work that you're doing and the medicine that you're sharing. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah. So Jen, I always like to ask any expert, because you're an author, you are a coach, you're an inspirational person. Oh gosh, you do a lot of these things. But one thing that I ask every healer is what I call us, because I recognize that those of us that have chosen this route, we help others heal because we kind of want to do the things that no one else ushered us through, or we want to make someone else's life easier. Those are the people that I typically find that are called to this line of work. So we need to know, what is Jen's backstory? And tell the audience in your own words what it is that you do now and what's your why.
Beautiful. Thank you. So what I do now is I specialize in inner child healing, and in particular around dissolving trauma. So those patterns that cause us to consistently be drawn to particular relationships or particular people, or unable to, start their business that we want to start. Those blocks that come up, they generally come back to the patterning and programming that we formed when we were children. So I specialize in actually helping you go into your subconscious mind and dissolving those particular patterns and programming so that you no longer keep going back to toxic relationships, or low self-worth is no longer a thing for you. So you can actually step into, honestly, who you actually came here to be.
Ooh,
So that's
who
what I
you
do
came
now.
here to be. You know, when I moved to New York, Jen, when I stepped off the plane and landed in Harlem, New York City, which is the community that I still live in 17 years later, I just could smell the smell of piss in the air, and the cab driver wouldn't pick me up. And I saw these tall buildings that looked nothing like the green rolling hills that I grew up in. And I was like, Naja, this is where you're going to become the woman that God put you on earth to be. So I understand exactly what you mean. What are some disruptors that kind of throw us as youth off pattern to becoming that human being and having that lived experience that we were put here to have?
So some of the things can be those major events that when we hit rock bottom, where we, they can be really defining for us, but they are also incredible opportunities for us to actually really grow through. And I have found on my journey, on my own personal journey, and also with my clients, without fail, whenever we go in to those places that might seem really dark, really very uncomfortable, places we don't want to be looking at, there is so much wisdom to be unlocked when we go into those places. So even when we are younger and we are hitting the rock bottom, or why is this happening to me? It can feel like it's happening to me, and in a way it is, but it's often actually happening for you.
Ooh, it's not happening to me, and it feels like the end of the world, but it's something that's for me to transform us, to grow us, to push us through to that next level where we might be resistant. What does rock bottom look like? And is there a typical age or a life event when rock bottom smacks us in the face?
Actually, I think we have all got, I want to say, different predetermined rock bottoms actually as part of our own soul plan or our journey that we have come into this incarnation to live. But there are definitely certain times, of course, I mean, one of the big areas that I think most of us can probably relate to is relationship breakdowns, marriage breakdowns, big relationship breakdowns. That is huge. It
Yeah.
is huge. None of us come out of that without some kind of, changes and invitation to evolve.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was certainly it for me. One of the big moments for me, for sure.
And that leads me into my next question. So your book, Coming Home, is based on your own healing journey. So can you kind of take us back into the moment where Jen Peters realized that she needed to heal her inner child?
Wow. Yes. Great question. Thank you. So I'd been in a narcissistic, codependent marriage for 14 years. I was severely codependent, had no idea. It just wasn't even a word that was used very often back then. And nor was narcissistic or narcissist either at that particular time. So I had no idea what that was. My head was spinning. Like, I literally remember being so destabilized that I didn't know what way was up, what way was down. And I remember thinking, if somebody had said to me that my name isn't really Jen, I could not have been 100% sure that it was. Like, I was I realize now, doing the work that I was doing, I was actually completely dissociated. I was completely out of my body, and that's why I felt like I was spinning so much. But a friend of mine had been saying to me for months, you need to see this healer, you need to see this healer. And for me, I was thinking, what do I need to see the healer for? I'm not the one having the affairs. And in the end, I contacted this person, and I honestly, in true codependent fashion, contacted her to book an appointment for my husband at the time, thinking that if he could only, have this healing, if he could only get better, then everything would be great. And I had no idea that, believe it or not, as hard as it is to actually receive this, we usually have a similar level of trauma to our partner. It might be slightly different trauma, and we might do different things with it, but we will have a similar level of trauma. And I had no idea about any of this until I started my own journey. So that was where mine started. My healer had obviously been down this path before, and she said, look, how about you come in for a session first, and then we'll go from there. And that was the turning point. I still remember that.
That opened your eyes. So you said something.
Absolutely.
You said we have a similar level. And I know there's a lot of people that heard you say that. Even me, I kind of clenched up a little, like, oh, wait a minute. What do you mean? We have a similar level of trauma as our partner. And it might not have matriculated the same or started the same. So does this mean like attracts like? We are attracting people that we are vibrating on the same level with? That's scary.
Now,
Okay, speak to that again. Break that down for us, Jen.
sorry, I should have given a trigger warning.
Oh my God. I'm triggered. Triggered, guys. Triggered.
And I will be honest, if somebody had said that to me, even probably in the first 2 years, I probably would have slapped them if I could have.
Yeah, that's not like something that you want to hear, because it's like, did I attract this? Do I deserve this? Was I broken too? Because we don't want to be adjacent to the broken person.
Of course. And here's the thing. I don't think there is anybody on this planet who does not have a reasonable amount of trauma. Obviously, some have more, some have less, and for some people it plays out in one particular way. For another person, it'll play out differently. And this does not absolve whatever has been done to you either. And I will also say that just because we're carrying trauma, and we may draw on somebody who is carrying similar trauma and a similar level, that does not mean that we deserve it or we've done anything wrong. Honestly, it's part of the human experience, to be honest. And as I said before, when we go through the healing process, not only do we heal, but we unlock so much of ourselves that we could not access any other way. But
Okay. So a lot of people do struggle with identifying their own childhood trauma. Was it during your sessions with your healer where you first learned the impact of your own childhood trauma? And is there any specific experiences that you remember that you could share, that you feel comfortable sharing with us?
sure.
And we keep it real on this podcast, Jen. These, my audience, they know what's up. They know we come in love, and I don't know, like we might need to issue a trigger warning here, but because Jen, it seems like I'm just going to be triggered this whole episode. So trigger warning for the whole episode, guys.
There's some sirens going off. No, I will say, and you know this already with the work that you do, that when we are triggered, the trigger is coming from some kind of trauma sitting there.
Yes.
That's where it's going wrong.
Yes.
So now, do you mind repeating your question?
Yeah. So, we struggle with identifying our childhood trauma. Some of us do. And, the ACE, the childhood experiences, the chart, it shows us like major life experiences. And there's 10 of them on there. I think one is the death of a parent. One is abuse, sexual abuse. One is being adopted. Like there's 10 of them on there, guys. I've studied. It's adverse childhood experiences. And I've shared this. As a matter of fact, guys, I'll link that below so you can see where you rank on the adverse childhood experiences chart and the resilience level. But were there any adverse childhood experiences that really directly impacted your ability to grow? And when you got in your healing work, you're like, oh, snap. That was the day. That was it. This is the thing.
Well, I was just thinking, I would say I probably tick every box on the chart, in all honesty, and I'm not trying to be, blow this out of proportion, but I started off being adopted. So I was adopted as a baby. And so, of course, you start off with a big abandonment wound right from the beginning. And in fact, I do a lot of work where I take my clients back into the womb when they were in the womb, because a lot of our trauma, believe it or not, actually starts there, because we absorb what's going on to mum, around mum, mum's thoughts. There's a lot that actually happens in that particular stage. So for me, there was the abandonment, but not only that, there was actually the rejection, the being unlovable, the being unwanted. And of course, those types of traumas immediately kick off things like low self-worth, not good enough. If I was
Did you feel those feelings from your adopted family, or are you saying this sometimes comes along with the territory of being adopted?
It will come along with the territory of being both, actually, but it will definitely come along with the territory of being adopted in the first place. Even when you're adopted into a loving family, that initial disconnection or rupture has already occurred. And in my case, like definitely not like everybody, but most people who are adopted, they're probably going to have, especially if it was a young mum, they're probably going to have been carried within mum, who was feeling perhaps scared and ashamed. And I know that my natural mother really did not want me right from the beginning. She was very aggressively, like she was very resentful towards me for actually even being there, because of what she had to go through when she was pregnant. So baby, we're marinating in those energies. We
are marinating in a pot of resent and anger and confusion and chaos. So, okay, this is side note, not even on like, I always consider like, should me and my husband, should we adopt? And that's one of the fears that I have, because I was like, I have so much love to give, but this is probably something that you and I could speak about at length. So we're not going to take up too much time, but that is a fear around it. Because I follow like adoption TikTok. Mm-hmm. And I see all the kids saying, oh, my adopted family was great. And I'm like, damn, bro. Like there's no winning. And then like with the surrogacy, if this woman is doing this and you're putting your embryo in someone else's house, you don't know what type of energy they're taking in every day. And
Correct.
I'll just get a puppy. It's too much, Jen. It's too much for me. Trigger warning again, y'all.
Yeah. I will say with that, there are ways where we can actually work through mum, in your case, you, and then work on baby and actually do that healing work for them through you.
Mm.
So that work can still be done, but I mean, it is quite specialized work and not everybody is going to be able to do that, but it can be done, is my
And
point.
I did not even realize until you just said it. I didn't realize it was a thing, but it makes so much sense because if biological mom just cannot keep you, and on this podcast, I launched this podcast specifically to speak to people in non-traditional families. So it started off as blended families, and then now you see we're talking to everybody around the globe. I mean, you're in New Zealand for goodness sake, but I didn't even know that that was a thing that was possible. Is it? This is off course, but if we can do that work because I do believe like a person that adopts or they're accepting someone into, a baby into their home or a human being, some sort of way a higher power put us together. They
Yeah.
wanted our paths to blend. So would that be the same? Is that possible for blended families too? Because
I would say so, yes.
so that type
Um,
of work that you just mentioned, it's like, hey, listen, we're meant to be in one another's path. So let's make a good time out of this very short time that we have
mhm.
in these skin bags that we're in. I don't know. It's like, I wonder, is that like a possible thing?
I feel like with a blended family, and I've not thought about it through that lens, but I feel like there's other threads, there's other layers there. It's mum and
Oh
dad.
yeah,
Their choices are going to come first, of course, here, and the kids are just coming along for the ride. Whereas
yeah,
I feel like with an adopted baby, yes, there will have been some kind of agreement, some kind of understanding
yeah,
spiritually that this was going to happen.
yeah, yeah.
It's a little bit different. There's the middleman, so to speak, is kind of is only there for a moment, whereas
True,
with a
true.
blended family, it's a little different. I think there's other
It's
layers to
it's just
consider.
way more convoluted. So healing can be a long and non-linear process. What were some of the biggest turning points in your own healing journey?
Wow, I'm so glad that you asked that. There's a couple of points that really stood out for me. So the first point was actually my very first session. Like I remember her saying she was going to lift the veil, and I had no idea what she was even talking about. But boy, I went in there thinking, right, I'm going to get this appointment sorted out for my husband. He's going to get sorted out, and we'll live happily ever after. I walked out of there going, right, that's it. I've been enabling him. That's it, done. And I am not
Life-changing
joking. It was
experience.
like that. I mean, I actually saw my healer at that particular time, every week for 3 years, and every second week for 5 years, for another 2 years. So I saw her a lot. I didn't just go the once. Um, that was very poignant for me. I remember about 6 months in, just the contrast with how I felt. Like I had always been in survival, and many of us are, and we have no idea because it's just our normal. Like we just get by, we just get through week to week, and that's life, right? And
Yeah.
so I had never experienced what it felt like to feel liberated. Like I remember making all my passwords all those years ago, liberated, because I couldn't believe it. Like the difference was quite incredible. And when I say that, I mean, I was like a walking trigger before. I would be triggered multiple times a day by multiple different things and people. And sometimes those triggers, especially after I separated, sometimes my ex-husband, he was very narcissistic, and some of the things he would do would bring me to my knees for like 2 weeks at a time. And that's no way to live, right? And I know that some of your beautiful audience will certainly relate to that. But
100% they will.
but it got to the point, and of course, when I started to really recognize that contrast, I thought to myself, I need to help other people feel like this. People need to know you can feel like this. And so I actually kept that to myself for probably 2 years at that point, because my self-worth was still obviously low enough that I just didn't even feel like I had the right to even say those words out loud. It took me a lot of work to get to that point.
Yeah.
But I do remember two particular events. One was my ex-husband had come to me one morning straight from the hospital. His wife had just had a brand new baby. that morning, he came to me on his way home to tell me, and I was really excited for them. Exactly. I know exactly what he was doing, but it didn't get the response he was hoping. And he even went as far as to show me a video. And I remember saying, like, is this okay?
That
Like,
woman probably would not want his
that's
ex-wife, her
exactly
husband's
right.
ex-wife, seeing her business.
Correct. And so that's what I said to him. But the thing that I really noticed is that zero trigger, no emotional charge on my front, on my part. And I just thought, wow, like that
I
would
don't
be enough
care.
to send most ex-wives, spiraling.
Yeah.
And there was also one other time standing out in the driveway. Here I'm talking about my ex-husband a lot, and I actually don't mean any disrespect to him at all. Actually, we've come a long
Yeah.
way since then.
Mhm.
But doing a handover, and I remember looking at him in the driveway, and I had no idea I was going to even say this, but it just came out, and I ended up actually thanking him. I'm going to get teary, thanking him for everything that we had been through, because whilst it was excruciating, and I would never want somebody else to actually go through some of the stuff that I went through, the truth was is without that stuff I would not have been and started to build the life that I was building. And that was only
Wow.
about 3 years, and I remember my tears streaming down my cheeks, and that's why I say it makes me teary now, because it's very true. And that's in that moment I realized that yes, he had done these terrible things. No, none of them were okay, but the fact was he was actually a partner in my own evolution. If he had
And
not
the
done that
narcissist is going to
stuff,
be like, yes, I win again. I got credit for something, because that's who the narcissist is. But that's interesting that you said that you, the person that caused me harm and anguish, even though you didn't come with good intentions, you were a partner. So thank you in helping me get to my higher self. And for those of you that are listening and not watching, I do encourage you to go over to the YouTube channel, or any one of the clips that we saw on social media, because Jen's face, and just rewind a few seconds back, because when she was talking about her healing, and she looks like a woman that was speaking about somebody that had just gained her freedom. Like she had been confined and her face changed. Can I saw it. I visually saw
yeah,
you when you were speaking about that. Just, it's almost like you had seen of what they tell us heaven looks like. I gotta go back, because for the people that are still caught in the cycle, and you guys out there know the cycle that I'm talking about, because she's speaking to a lot of us right now. So the cycle that you all are currently, some of us are caught in. What does it feel like when you get to the other side? Because I don't think people know how good it feels when you experience that other side of when you're free.
well, it's hard to put in words, in all honesty. And I really appreciate
I
those
saw your
reflections.
face
Thank you
though. I
so
saw
much.
your
And
face, so I know there's words for it. But
yeah, yeah. In all honesty, like not a day goes by, particularly back then for that first few years, where I wasn't just like, I am so grateful for my life, like so grateful for how things have become. Like the freedom, like it's hard to explain, but physically, you are a lot more spacious in your body. You're not being triggered left, right, and center. You're noticing like the things that used to trigger you, even if you're being baited, you just see it for what it is. There's no emotional charge in you. You just see it for what it is,
yeah,
and you just carry on doing your thing. It's almost like watching a little 2-year-old try and push your buttons, and they're not able to push your buttons, and you're just carrying on like normal and just going, oh, there he goes again. And it's got no effect on you. Like it really is quite incredible. But not only that, is as we heal, when we're healing deeply like this, our whole frequency shifts. And not to go too far down that path, but as our frequency shifts, our whole life shifts. Things get easier. You have higher level opportunities coming into your life, experiences, good things just happen more easily. And yeah, there might be the occasional bump in the road, but the difference is that instead of being on your knees like it used to be for me, it would just send me spiraling for a couple of weeks at a time.
Yeah.
You might get knocked down for a day or for a few hours and you get back up again, you're done. It's very hard to put into words, but it is an emotional freedom and liberation that was strong enough that that is what was the catalyst for me to go into this work, to help other people feel this way.
So, Jen, I've seen a couple quotes from you, especially in your book, Coming Home. You say that our relationship with our parents sets the template for the partners that we choose. Oh, can you break that down for us? And what are some common patterns that we might not realize that we're repeating?
Sure thing. Yes, I think we've all heard the phrase that, I married my father or I married my mother.
Yes.
So there's a few things happening here. What tends to happen is when we've had some kind of rupture with a parent, say, for example, we might have had this is not to say that it's only dads that can be alcoholics, but say we had a dad who was an alcoholic. So because of that, he's going to be very unavailable. Chances are he's going to be violent as well. He might be in and out of your life, but there are certain patterns there. So what happens from an inner child perspective is that younger version of you, they will be desperate to try and mend that relationship with dad, because then if they can mend that relationship with dad, maybe he can show up fully for them and then he will love them. So what happens is we will subconsciously, and bearing in mind that 95% of our preferences and our behaviors, our choices come from our subconscious mind. So it's 95%. It's not 5% is intellectual. Like that blows my mind. I have to say that thought. But basically, those little inner children, they're still working really hard to try and repair that original relationship. So they will be naturally drawn to and drawing you towards partners who feel just like that. They might have other things that are not the same, but there will be similarities. And when we peel it back, we'll realize that it's the same kind of patterns. And of course, unfortunately, those people are carrying their own trauma and they're actually not able to, in most cases, they're not capable of being that partner that you're wanting them to be. So that's extremely, extremely common. That's just an example, but it could be an emotionally unavailable parent. It could be a parent who is really critical, a parent who made you feel not good enough. You could apply it to anything. So we've got that angle going on, and we've also got the fact that our trauma or our patterning, or everything is energy actually, but our patterning and trauma is too. So emotionalized energy is highly magnetic. We will be naturally drawn to, just like magnets, other frequencies that feel the same or similar. And that's back to the original question we just talked about before.
Yeah, so that would explain why it's so hard to leave these types of relationships, because it's my assertion that, like what you just said, it sounds like we're trying to repair a thing within us that we didn't break. Someone else break, or we just arrived and it was broken, but we're trying to repair it.
That is true. And so what actually is happening here is we have multiple little inner children. And of course, having that connection with our parents is absolutely paramount. So those little inner children are sitting in our subconscious mind, which is responsible for about 95% of our choices, our decisions, our reactions, and our preferences. So those little inner children will be wanting to recreate a similar dynamic that they had with that particular parent that they had that rupture with, in the hope of repairing it. So just for example, if you had an alcoholic, in this case, an alcoholic father, chances are that you'd have inner children sitting in there who are desperate to try and create a loving, connected relationship with them, because they didn't get to have that when they were a child. So at a subconscious level, they will be seeking partners who feel just like dad. And the same could be said whether you had an emotionally unavailable parent, a parent who wasn't there very much, a parent who was really overly critical or made you feel that you were never good enough. You will find partnerships that will recreate similar dynamics.
So is it possible for a person that is healed to maintain a relationship with a person that is still very much damaged and has not done the work?
Yeah, it is absolutely possible, but here is the thing. What happens is that as we heal, because what happens with a relationship? So we get into a relationship. We might have, say, 6 primary main themes of trauma ourselves. They've probably got 6 or 7. There's going to be a bit of an overlap with those traumas. We will have
Yeah.
similar traumas to that other person. They just might play out slightly differently. So what's happening is as you heal your traumas, you're no longer bonding with them in that same way. For example, an abandonment trauma, which I say that because it's so common, but
Yeah.
basically if we have an abandonment trauma, we're most likely going to have attachment trauma as well. As we heal our attachment trauma, we're not going to be so keen to entertain somebody else's attachment trauma. That where it was fine before, it's probably not going to be fine now. And that's going to continue to happen. So you're going to find that you're going to be less attached and less inclined to want to participate in things that you were
Guys,
okay about
what
participating
Jen
before.
is saying is once you start healing, you're going to probably start to, gosh, this is my words, not Jen's. You're going to just detest them. You're going to be like, oh my God, this relationship is not in it. You're going to feel like you're outgrowing them actively.
Correct.
And you're going to kick them to the curb. Like, I think that, you're at the beginning of the end. Yes. Just know that you are at the beginning of the end of that situation, and it is completely okay. So now for somebody that's just starting their inner child healing journey, what's one of the first steps that they could take if they know, okay, I need to heal my inner child? What's one of the first things that we could do?
So I would say to find somebody that you resonate with who does this kind of work. You want to learn how to do it yourself, but also you may wish to look at maybe for a couple of months working with somebody so that they can help you do the heavy lifting first. So for example, I mean, I've got a couple of courses, that can help for people who are just starting. So you want to learn from somebody who actually knows how to do it because it is quite complex. One of the things that I've found is that a lot of approaches simply don't go deep enough. Now, they're too surface level, and you will know when you're going to surface level because you're not going to get the results. You've got to go deeper into the subconscious mind. So finding somebody that you resonate with and you like their message, it feels right to you rather than them just saying that that's what they do, that is where I would start.
Okay. Find the right, guys, if you have a toothache, you're going to go and see the dentist. You're going to go and see the person that can fix your immediate need. But then if you decide that you want veneers, your dentist might only do cleanings. He might not specialize in cosmetic work. So then you're going to have, like Jen said, someone that specializes. So I actually love that. How can we tell the difference between, in our relationship, if we are in a trauma bond or an actual, genuine, emotional, real bond?
Such a great question.
It's almost like I sent you the questions before.
So just brace yourself for a moment. So we know when we are trauma bonded because a trauma bond, there is a real urgency and emotional charge, and the idea of stepping away from that person for whatever reason will cause you to probably panic and become quite triggered. Whereas with an emotional connection, it fits like hand in glove. And yes, the idea of stepping away from them would be really upsetting and would make you really sad. But there isn't that overwhelming panic or urgency or desperation that would come with a trauma bond. And with a trauma bond too, it's almost like we don't have control over it. It has control over us.
We don't have control over it. It has control. Because, you get into, and I hear this all the time, people that are in new relationships. Oh my God, it felt like I've known them forever. But we are bonding over hurtful things. Is there a way to avoid a trauma bond in a new relationship so we can just build it off of love and trust and faith and hope?
I know this is not going to be the answer that people want to hear.
Oh gosh, here we go. Oh, Jen, here we go.
No, honestly, do the work on yourself. Like the meaningful work that actually creates the change on yourself. So, for example, if we've got a history, we've got a history of attachment trauma, we're anxious attachment, and we go into our relationships head first, heal our own attachment trauma, and then we're not going to go into relationships in that same way.
Yeah.
It's our own trauma that is causing us to do that. And the thing is, as well, is that, as I said before, we are drawn to people that have a similar level of trauma and also the similar traumas, so traumas themselves. And so quite often we feel seen and heard and understood because the other person had a similar background probably, so it is very intoxicating.
That same lived experience, I guess it
Yeah.
feels familiar. It feels like home,
It's
even if home was broken.
It does. And I've been there myself as well. I do get it. But the key, honestly, it comes back to doing our own inner work. That doesn't mean you can't ever date until you're, I don't know if there's ever such a thing as being completely healed, but you can certainly be a lot more healed than when we first start. But doing that work ourselves, it means that our frequency shifts. We don't have so many patterns that are going to bring us down paths that are not good for us anymore. And we do start to bring in people who are also of quite honestly, a higher frequency, a higher consciousness, and who have also either had less trauma in their life or they've also done their own work.
And that's the hard part. You guys don't want to listen to me when I say this. I say if and this is anybody, whether in a same sex, different sex relationship, whatever, if you are getting with a person that's never sat on someone's couch, and or they don't answer to some sort of higher power, whatever they call their higher power, him, her, they, she, whatever, I find that you're going to have a more difficult time because who do they answer to? Whom have they gone to for expertise? Because they don't know everything. I would never have married my husband if he had not been to therapy before we got together. And one thing I found out about a lot of my clients, the first time that their husbands or partners or wives or whatever have been to see someone is in relationship counseling. So some woman has dragged them by the ear and said, and offered them an ultimatum. If you don't come to therapy or counseling, then it's over. So they reluctantly sit there with their arms folded, huffing and puffing. But these are the people that are refusing to do the work. And if you find yourself in a relationship with one of those, honey, God help you. Miss Naja can't. I've sat in too many sessions with some clients and I'm like, hey, you don't want to be here, do you? I can get a sense that you don't want to be here. So let me talk to this person so you guys can get your money's worth. And then they want to stay because then they know I'm going to tell their partner something that they need to be a part of. So if our relationship did start, Jen, based on a trauma bond, but we've grown love for this person, can it survive?
I think it'll be very tumultuous until some work is done on both sides.
You gotta fix it.
Either the person doing the work is going to be self-abandoning. We're going to be abandoning our own needs by staying with this person who just frankly, you've probably well and truly outgrown, or if you're staying at the same level, it's going to be very up and down and push-pull. It's never going to be harmonious like that. Here's the thing, you raised such a good point too. I definitely see it as well when people give the ultimatum around the healing, or they might do it more subtly. Either way, the other person needs to actually be ready to heal. They need to want to heal, because if they don't, they aren't going to. It's just as simple as that. They are not ready to. And so your invitation is to, consider whether it is time to pause and step out of that.
Yeah.
I mean, not necessarily immediately, but if they're obviously not going to make those changes, well, nothing's going to change, and you either
And I
accept
firmly
a whole lot
believe those
less or
people, I firmly believe those people that are reluctant or just outright refusing to go and seek the help that everybody sees that they need, but they can't see it. If you stay with them, they're going to drag you down back to their
oh
level.
yes,
You're going to be fighting to get your head above water. In the moment you can take a breath and see, oh my God, I'm above water. I can breathe. I can see there's a beautiful world out there. They're going to pull you right back under, because that's where they exist. So run.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I was just going to say something that completely escaped my mind about that, actually.
Yeah, we can come back to
Yeah.
it. So if you can go back and give younger Jen one piece of advice, what would that
Well,
be?
I would say it's going to make me teary again. This is the only podcast I've interviewed on where I've gotten teary. I really love the way that you hold this
Cause
space.
see,
So
don't
thank
get
you.
teary. Cause when people get teary, I get teary, and I just did my makeup.
And we all
Please
get teary.
don't do this. Look, I got my tissue right here. Don't do it, Jen. Okay, just don't do it. I'm not
No,
gonna look at you.
honestly, there was a time where whilst our marriage was extremely toxic, there was, infidelity and drugs and all sorts of stuff. It was, in some domestic violence as well. It was not a great place, but I couldn't see anything beyond that. That's all I could imagine. I didn't know that there was anything else. And I had a little 2-year-old, and I hadn't worked for 3 years. So it's just like, what on earth am I going to do? And got to the point where, honestly, like, I sort of moved out of our family home. And so this other person was living in my family home, in my bedroom, with my ex-husband and my future. And I was co-parenting and sharing my little 2-year-old with this person who had aggressively pursued my husband. Half the time we had 50-50 each. That's a lot. That's a bitter pill to swallow. I would be saying to
Yeah.
her that really right now it might look like everything has crumbled, and it has, and that is because there is a version of you that is waiting to be birthed right now, that is waiting to emerge, and a life that you could not even begin to imagine is awaiting for you and your son. So that was really just like a complete crumbling of everything. And it
Would you
had to
have
happen that
believed
way.
it if the Jen from now would have gone back to that disheveled woman who had to split 50-50 with an ex-husband and his mistress, send your baby over there into that environment, lovingly send your baby over there, and new Jen would have appeared before you and said, "Hey, something great is next. You can't see it." Would you have believed her?
All I could see at that stage was red. I was not happy.
You were probably pretty pissed off, and rightfully so. For
Yeah.
anybody that's listening that's going through that right now, I'm sure that they can identify with the pain and the anger that you probably felt. And you maybe had to make it look good for your baby. And
Mm-hmm.
some days you probably just couldn't hide it from your baby. Do you have any words of advice to the woman or man or human being that's in that place right now?
Actually, I do. There was a couple of things. I was so glad I was seeing my healer at that particular time so she could guide me, because there were two things. Number one, in dissolving a lot of that immediate trauma, then that was the only way I could get through. I have absolutely no doubt that had I not done that with her initially, the bitterness and the anger was intense. I really think I would have probably exactly developed cancer or something along those lines, something pretty gnarly, because of
Yes.
that trauma will be sitting in our body. we've got to release it from our body. Otherwise, it becomes something later on. So I really think that would have been the end of me at some point had I not done that. And the other thing that she said to me, and she was so right, because I was sharing my little one with this woman and my ex-husband, the best thing I could do was to get her on side. And I know that feels counterintuitive.
What does that mean?
Exactly. Well, because it's not always possible. It depends on the other person, obviously. But it was much better. It's much better for my son and for me to work with this woman and have her like me than have her working against me when she's parenting my child. Does that make sense? Very difficult to do. And again, it depends on the person. There would be some people that you just wouldn't be able to do that with. I get that. But if this person is mothering your child when you're not there. So we need to have them parenting in a similar way to you and having your back. And that's not going to happen if you are causing fights left, right, and center.
Damn. You said something. You said if you don't heal that piece of yourself, if you did not heal that piece of yourself, you would have done some major damage to your nervous system. Because I'm sure it was always on fire. But then there was somebody that I know, they were going through a divorce, and I knew the guy, and the guy's lawyer was like, hey, I sat with your ex-wife. She is so angry, and there's fire coming from her face. She literally sweats when she speaks. She was like, and this woman was also a healer. The attorney just happened to be a healer, spiritual healer. She was like, I hate to say this, but she was like, if she doesn't fix this, that woman's going to go blind. I can feel it attacking her. And what you just said, it just took me back to that moment. If we don't heal ourselves, healing is really for ourselves. It's for our kids, of course, but it's really for ourselves, because do you want some autoimmune disease? A couple weeks ago, we had somebody on the podcast. She's a registered nurse, and now she's a healer. And she was just like, I was checking my cortisol levels when she was going through her own divorce, because she was a nurse. She's at the hospital. She can check them herself. She was like, they were rising to astronomical levels. I was going to have a stroke if I did not stop. Hatred is such a strong word, but
I get it. And it's honestly, sometimes it's actually quite justified with whatever's happened.
Yes. I kind of feel like in your case, it was pretty justified. Like,
I felt like that too. And it was, but I just couldn't hang on to it. And because here's the thing as well, is that when we are holding on to that kind of stuff, whilst it is 100% valid, it's an absolute brick wall for you connecting. In this case, it was with my son. Like, how was I supposed to mother him and connect with him if I was just this flaming fury of bitterness? Like, you just can't. So they win again. So it was a case of actually, what's the best way for me to get my job done? And it was like that. It was.
See, I hear everything you're saying. It's just a lot of the work that I do is for the people that are on the receiving end of that unhealed person. So they're getting the bitterness, they're getting the anger. Why? It feels like it's almost easier to commit to being angry because now I'm the consummate victim. You guys hurt me. And obviously you and I both know it trickles down to the kids, but is there some sort of benefit that they feel to staying and sleeping and living in that victimhood or that anger?
So that's a really great question. I'm glad you've raised that. I think a large part of the problem is the benefit is that it justifies how they're feeling. But you know what the secret is? You know what the secret is?
What?
And this hardly ever happens. And I think it would simmer things down very quickly, is actually having the other people involved to actually apologize. I am sorry I put you through that. I'm sorry.
Wait a minute. Hold on, Jen. Hold on. It just paused. Hold on 1 second. So you start that over. Say you want to know the secret is having the other people. Start there.
So the secret really is. Sorry, let's start again. What was the question? Just remind.
The
There were
people
two
you
secrets.
say
That was
you said you want to know what the secret is having the other people involved, and then the
Oh,
computer
that's
just
right. Gotcha. Sorry. So I believe that the secret is if the ex partner and the new partner, especially if there was some kind of affair or
funny
if they
business.
felt wronged in some way or another, if there was something that was probably out of integrity, to actually say that to the person to validate how they're feeling. Like if you could say to them, look, I'm sorry I hurt you, I'm sorry that this hurt you, I'm sorry that you went through what you went through. If you acknowledge that to the other person, you watch the wind go out of their sails. Like that's really what they're wanting to hear. I would say, like we stay like a stuck record and keep telling our story again and again and again because we don't feel heard, we don't feel validated. To actually have the ex partner or the new partner, whoever was involved, to actually say, "I'm sorry, this hurt you so much."
Whoo! There's a
That
lot
would
of
make such
us,
a difference.
there's a lot of us, and probably including myself, that, because I'm a firm believer when the heart breaks, it doesn't break evenly. And if we're hurt, we're always looking for ways and places and people to blame. So that sounds like a conversation that could begin the healing is, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Just, I'm sorry.
yeah.
But I guess the other partner would have to, everybody would have to be healed. Because I think in order to offer that apology, you yourself have to just be able to see the bigger picture.
Yeah, and you know the thing that we did, and I'm so glad that we did do this. It was a game changer for us. I remember going to a job interview, hadn't worked for 3 years. My ex-husband rang, and I remember him screaming down the phone that he was going to take me to court and take me for everything I'm worth, and da 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 da. And I was literally on the way to a job interview, and I remember
Oh,
saying to him, "Look, we have to co-parent for the next 15 years whether we want to or not. We actually have to, like there is no choice not to. So we can either do it the hard way or the easy way, and I vote that we do it the easy way, as in like working together. We didn't always work together, but one thing we did do, and it made such a difference, and again it requires everybody to do the same thing, which is not always possible, but if you stay child-centered, like, what is the best choice for my child? What's the best choice for our son? It becomes extremely obvious what the course of action needs to be. And it takes the power struggle out of the two people who are trying to get one over the other one, or,
wow. Jen, that's a mouthful. And I think this is a good place to stop, because you've dropped so much knowledge for us today. I think people are going to need to go back and rewind and take some notes and rewind again and be like, wait a minute, what did she say? Oh my God. Jen, can you tell everybody exactly where to find you and how to grab some of your resources?
Sure thing. So I'm most active on Instagram, and my details will be below, but it's at Jen Peters, one word, _soul guide _healer. I do a lot of posting with information and tools and tips. I also have a course that would be ideal. I'm happy to offer this to your people at a low rate if you like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
They would love that. We love discounts over here.
well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to send you a link for my book. And so it'll be a PDF version, but for free. And there's actual healing processes in there as well. But also, what I'm thinking, dissolving codependency is one of my courses, and it's literally to help you dissolve the abandonment wound, the overgiving, the overdoing. When we've got that codependent narcissistic dynamic, dissolving our codependency stops that dynamic. So
Mm.
I'll pop those details over to you so you
Yes,
can do
send
all
those to
the
me and I
way.
will put those down below.
Yeah,
Guys, all the links that Jen mentioned, they will be below. If you are on the mailing list, which you absolutely should be, then the version of her book that she just offered us, I'm just going to give that to people on the mailing list because I just don't want that floating
perfect.
around the internet. in all of her links. Jen, when you come to New York City, you have to let me take you out for tea. I just would be so delighted. So let me know when you head over to the United States. It's not as crazy as it looks on television right now, but just I don't know.
I've been looking closely. Most of my clientele in the US, so I've been watching it very closely.
Yeah, it's a hot mess. It's a hot mess. Well, listen, Jen Peters, thank you so much for tuning in and for being here today for another episode of I Know I'm Crazy with Naja Hall. For those of you out there listening or watching, I thank you so much for being so supportive over these 5 years. We haven't made it to being top 10 for nothing. I will see you Tuesdays, every other Tuesday, wherever your favorite podcasts are streamed.
I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy. Naja Hall.